fantasy of Russian collusion continues to dominate American political life. It doesn't matter that almost nobody actually believes any of it and never has. Proving non-existent collusion was never the point of the exercise. The point, obviously, was blame shifting. Hillary didn't lose the election. The political establishment wasn't completely out of touch with voters. The media weren't embarrassingly wrong about everything. Nope, none of that happened. Putin did it. It's his fault. But when you think of all the unemployed people in California, American citizens, and there are a ton, African-American unemployment rate's really high, why would I spend a single second worrying about the job of a foreign citizen over the job of an American? Like, why would I want to give any foreign citizen a job before every American has one? The real value of this interview is what it says about James Comey. By the end, you realize that Comey never should have been FBI director. He's too partisan. Trump's main mistake was in not firing him on Inauguration Day. In his interview with ABC, Comey defends his prosecution of Martha Stewart, who you remember went to jail for lying to federal prosecutors. He then attacks General David Petraeus. According to Comey, Petraeus should have faced far more than a lone charge for mishandling classified information. He should have gone to prison for lying. In Comey's words, lying, quote, strikes at the heart of our rule of law in this country. Fair enough. The powerful should be held accountable for their misdeeds. But then Comey goes on to talk about the Mark Rich case. Do you remember that? On his way out of office, Bill Clinton sold a presidential pardon to a wanted felon who had fled the country. Comey is unambiguous about that case. Quote, I've never heard of another case where a fugitive from justice was pardoned. So Stephanopoulos then asks the obvious question. Quote, did you draw any conclusions about the Clintons, about Hillary Clinton from those experiences? Comey's response? Nope, none at all. Selling a presidential pardon to a fugitive says nothing whatsoever about the Clintons or their character. And by the way, Comey goes on to say, that Hillary Clinton is awfully smart and hardworking. You know, I don't know, says Jim Comey. Comey doesn't know if Lynch was trying to protect Hillary Clinton. He doesn't want to draw any conclusions from that. He has no idea if the Attorney General was behaving politically when she told him to parrot the Clinton campaign's talking points. Well, there's a theme here. Again and again, partisan Democrats get every benefit of every doubt from Jim Comey. He can't rush to conclusions. That is, until he sees the white circles under Donald Trump's eyes. Then he's happy to speculate. Comey says repeatedly that lying is what bothers him most. He's devoted his life to fighting against dishonesty. That's why he wrote the book, he says. But Comey also says that former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper is the public servant he admires most. That's right, the very same James Clapper who lied to Congress, falsely claiming that intelligence agencies don't spy on Americans when he knew perfectly well that they do. To this day, regardless of what you hear, we've never seen any evidence that the government of Russia directed the theft of data from those servers, or from John Podesta's Gmail account, for that matter. We just take that on faith. Everyone repeats it like it's true. But why should we believe that without actual proof? Because people like Jim Comey say so? Because our intel agencies never lie to us? Right. Comey's main piece of evidence that the president is a Russian stooge is that he never heard Trump criticize Vladimir Putin, even in private conversations. I don't know what's behind that, Comey says meaningfully. The implication is that Trump is unpatriotic, a traitor to America. So that's the new standard. Unless you denounce Putin vigorously and behind closed doors, our top law enforcement officials suspect you of disloyalty and criminal intent, and then all but accuse you of that on television. Finally, for a guy who says he's determined not to be political, Comey seems highly political. He says repeatedly in the interview with ABC that he's greatly influenced by his wife. He cites a number of occasions when she's weighed in on his job at DOJ, including during the investigation into torture at Abu Ghraib. Comey says again and again that he listens carefully to his wife. Well, given that, it's significant that Comey's wife turns out to be a bitter Hillary partisan. Well, this week, Bank of America announced it will no longer lend money to companies that manufacture what it calls assault weapons for civilian use. That move comes in the wake of Citigroup's announcement it won't work with retailers unless they bar gun sales to people under 21. News accounts describe these as victories for gun control, and they are. But they're not victories for America. Even if you hate guns and you hate gun owners, even if you want to repeal the Second Amendment entirely, you should not be celebrating this development. You should be worried. It is a threat to you and the country. Bank of America ought to stick to banking. It does a good job at that, and it's safer for everybody when they stay in their lane. When you see those polls showing that young people prefer socialism to capitalism, you're probably horrified. You should know that student loan debt is one of the big reasons why. It was also a major factor in Bernie Sanders' sudden rise to national celebrity. It's also a big factor in our country's drift toward populist economics. Our elites mostly don't notice any of this because, of course, it doesn't affect them. But student loan debt is making our politics far more radical. If you like capitalism, you ought to be very worried about student loan debt. Eric Nesbitt is a Republican candidate for state Senate in the state of Michigan. His online campaign announcement was recently rejected by Facebook for containing what they called shocking and disrespectful material. Facebook now says that rejection was a mistake. Now they've been called on it. Eric Nesbitt joins us tonight to explain. Eric, thanks for coming on. So what exactly about your announcement was determined by Facebook or its famous algorithm as disrespectful or shocking?
Still trying to figure that out. It was just announcing my candidacy for the state Senate last week here in West Michigan, and I talked about limiting government, lowering taxes, lowering our auto insurance rate, and defending the unborn, and protecting our Second Amendment rights, and visiting my website, votenesbitt.com. That's all I was going for. And,
well, I think when you got to defending the unborn and protecting the Second Amendment, you don't think that's to Facebook? If you live in Menlo Park, that's not shocking? How would attacking Syria help the United States? How would it help make us richer, or safer, or happier? You'd think our policymakers would keep that question foremost in mind always. They don't. They consider the effect on America an irrelevant consideration, maybe even offensive to consider. They are highly annoyed when you ask about it, like only an agent of a foreign government would want to know how a U.S.-led war might help the U.S. You might not agree with his politics, but Colbert is not stupid. He's smart enough not to engage in a conversation that might reveal him as a mindless warmonger posing as a liberal. So he talked about pandas instead. Well, virtually all of official Washington, Republicans and Democrats, have united behind the idea that the United States has a moral obligation to go deeper into war in Syria. We already have thousands of troops in Syria, though you wouldn't know it from watching the other Robert Mueller-based channels. They're all Stormy Daniels all the time. Jennifer Rubin of the Washington Post tweeted this, quote, "He is insane," meaning me. "Fox is not a news organization. That is all." Noah Rothman of Commentary called this show, quote, "nothing less than undiluted Russian propaganda." Seth Mandel of the New York Post summarized the criticism perfectly when he tweeted this, very simply, "Shut the F up." These are journalists, by the way. No explanation. Of course, shutting the F up is the whole point of tweets like that. They want you to be quiet. They want you to do what you're told. No more questions. Shut up and obey. There's no chance of that, though. Sorry. Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. If you've been watching TV today, you know that thousands of children walked out of school across America demanding the passage of new gun control laws. This follows the mass shooting in Parkland, Florida, of course. The walkout is being hailed by a ruling class as an act of moral bravery, but of course students do not act independently, brave as they may be. They can't act independently. They're under the control of adults. In this case, by definition, they're in school. So when you hear 16-year-olds scream, "Hey, NRA, how many people did you kill today?" you can guess about whether they know what they're saying or whether they really believe it. Some of them do. But you can be certain adults are behind it. And they are. Today's events were organized by the Women's March with the support of dozens of other groups, from Michael Bloomberg's gun lobby to Planned Parenthood. Celebrities, journalists, political elites across the country cheered them on. The TV channel Nickelodeon went dark for 17 minutes to show support for, quote, kids leading the way. In New York City, a student die-in was joined by the governor of the state, Andrew Cuomo. In Baltimore, that city spent more than $100 grand in taxpayer money to transport students to anti-gun rallies. This in a city with one of the highest murder rates in the nation, a city that cannot afford trash cans or street lights. Meanwhile, in Alexandria, Virginia, 65 students walked out of an elementary school, as if kids under 10 can go anywhere by themselves. Now, whether you like the kids or like what they're saying, and you may, but you should be opposed to this, because kids should not be used to advance political agendas, anyone's. Why? Because they're children. They're not old enough to have the perspective that adults do. That's why we don't let them vote or drink, or if today's protesters have their way, buy guns. And so it's wrong to exploit them, which, by the way, is exactly what is being done to them today, what the left is doing and has always done, from Mao's Red Guards to right now. So would you, for example, I know you supported what happened today, have a problem if these kids were being driven by their teachers in buses to an NRA rally, or if they were rallying against transgender bathrooms, the March for Biology? How would you feel about that? Kids of the age of most of these students, 16-year-olds, can't vote, so they're actually not in the democratic process. And we've agreed that they shouldn't be in the democratic process. We've agreed that until they can make rational decisions, they can't vote. And by the way, you don't want them to buy guns. So if they're too young to buy guns, why should they be making my gun laws? Because you like it. But if they were going out, if one of their teachers, some scary alt-right person, was taking them to a Milo rally, you would freak out, as you know. And you know it. Just admit it. And let's just be honest with each other. Look, if there were 50,000 kids going to a Milo Yiannopoulos rally right now, taken by their teachers from Fort Worth, you would say this is the end of America. If you believe that the police have a problem with racist violence, why do you want the police to be the only people to have guns? It's a simple question. Well, the massacre in Parkland, Florida last week has not surprisingly sparked a renewed push on the left to take guns away from American citizens. The new call is for a ban on so-called assault rifles. That's an intentionally imprecise term that includes AR-15s and a lot of other sporting rifles. Bans of any kind tend not to be popular, but Americans are so upset, many of them, by the school shootings, and rightly so, that they might be open to a ban if it promised to save lives. So the question is, would an assault weapons ban prevent future shootings? That's the key question, and luckily we don't need to guess about the answer. We already had an assault weapons ban in this country for 10 years, starting in 1994. Now, that law, when it was written, mandated a comprehensive study of its effectiveness, which was produced, so we have a definitive answer. According to the Justice Department, our assault weapons ban, the one that passed in 1994, had no effect on crime rates. None. Nobody was saved by it. That shouldn't be surprising if you know the numbers, because despite the hype, rifles are actually not the weapon of choice for the overwhelming majority of killers in America. In 2015, the most recent year for which we have data, rifles were used in a total of 252 homicides in America. By comparison, old-fashioned knives, sharpened metal, were used in more than 1,500 killings. Blunt objects killed 437. A striking 624 murders were committed with bare hands and feet. Those are the actual numbers on that from the government. What's a military-style assault weapon? Well, according to the law, it's any weapon that has features like a detachable magazine, a pistol grip, a forward grip, a folding stock, or the infamous barrel shroud, presumably named because its purpose is shrouded in mystery for the people who propose banning it. They have no idea what it is. Most of these are cosmetic features, by the way. They don't make firearms more deadly. They just make them look more scary, and that's enough.
Successfully, and it works because you give people red meat, and the fans like it.
I'm responding. It's not about the fans or red meat. I'm responding to an actual piece of proposed legislation in the U.S. Congress proposed by your allies in the Democratic Party, and I'm asking you about the details of that legislation. It would propose banning guns that have pistol grips and barrel shrouds and bayonet lugs. Have there been a lot of mass killings with bayonets? What is this?
What you do well is focus on something, and I'll tell you something
focus
else.
on facts, right. Yeah, that is kind of
but
my
I want to focus
suit.
on the...
Totally, I don't know who gave you that talking point, but you ought to fire him because it's
an important talking point, and I'll look forward to...
And the effects of that have been studied, and here's what they showed. There was a short-term labor shortage, obviously. People here to work, they can't work. There was a labor shortage. But over time, automation made up for it, and wages went up for American workers. Costs, meanwhile, went down. Prison costs went down. Education costs went down dramatically by hundreds of millions of dollars. So given that we know that, why does it help the economy to legalize people here illegally? So this study, which got a hold of Arizona state numbers, which I think are legitimate, says that people illegally in Arizona are far more likely to commit serious crime. Do you not believe that? Are you just ignoring it? Or what's your response to that?
So I just received the arrest and crime data from the last calendar year, 2017, for the city of Phoenix. And that wasn't what we found in the city of Phoenix. Unfortunately, violent crime was led by people who live here and who were born here.
That's not the question. Were people who were there illegally more likely or less likely to commit serious crimes in the city of Phoenix? Are you really saying they were less likely? I don't think that's what the numbers show. So are you saying, just to be totally clear, because we're almost out of time, are you saying that you've seen numbers that in the city of Phoenix, people here illegally were less likely to commit serious crimes than citizens? Is that what you're saying? I just want to get you on the record.
I'm saying we need comprehensive immigration reform, and it will help.
Oh, you're slipping out of the question. I'm asking a very simple question, and you're not giving me a real answer, and I think that tells the whole story. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. A number of figures on the left have denounced this show as racist. It's notable that not a single one of them has offered any evidence to support that slur or even bothered to rebut the arguments that we make every night. They just make loud noises about white supremacy and assume that's an argument. Of course, the rest of the media dutifully repeat that. The latest person to attack our show as immoral is former Weekly Standard editor Bill Kristol. Now, there are an awful lot of ways we could respond to Crystal, a former intellectual who now exists primarily on Twitter, and we considered them. But why? Crystal discredited himself years ago. That's why he no longer has a full-time job. The point of our immigration policy, the point of all of our policies, is to help Americans. Watching out for our citizens is the only reason we have a government in the first place. If people in other countries enjoy and benefit from what we do, that's great. That's an added bonus, and we welcome that always. But it can never be the main point of what we do. Americans are the main point. That's always true, no matter what the issue is. When the concerns of foreigners take precedence over the needs of Americans, our government is betraying us and has become illegitimate. Not all immigrants are the same, just like not all college applicants are the same. Some are worth admitting, others are not. Americans get to decide who makes the cut. It's our country, it's our call. In Israel and in Hungary, walls have proven remarkably effective at controlling who crosses borders. And that's why Democrats oppose one on our border. Not because it won't work, but precisely because it will work. The Democratic Party has no interest in halting the flow of illegal immigrants, no matter how much it might hurt Americans who already live here. They've done the math. Democrats lost in 2016 because our middle class rejected them. That means they've got two options now. They can embrace the issues the middle class cares about, or they can import an entirely new electorate from the third world and change the demographics of the U.S. so completely they'll never lose again. They're going with the latter option. This is why I'm confused. Okay, so you're very spun up, and all Democrats and a lot of Republicans, too, are spun up about the inhumanity of what we're doing to these people here illegally, and their parents and their relatives still in other countries. I wonder why I don't see the same level of outrage, not just from you, because I think you actually talk about working Americans a lot, but from any of the leaders in your party. When was the last time Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer showed a similar level of moral outrage for the 95 million Americans not working, or the 50,000 who died of drug ODs last year? The emphasis seems to be on non-American citizens over American citizens. I don't think I'm imagining that. I bet you've noticed it.